Hi everyone, it's Michaela.
It's Charisma.
I'm Lauren.
And it's Cam.
And welcome to Bruin Table Talk.
In honor of Black History Month, we will be honoring a few notable UCLA Bruin alumni.
Our special guest today is
Christine Simmons.
Hey ladies, thanks for having me.
Of course. So Christine is UCLA alumni class of 1998. After earning her bachelor's degree at UCLA, she has been involved with multiple organizations, including being the former president of the board of the UCLA Alumni and UCLA Foundation board member. Christine has served as both executive vice president with Magic Johnson Enterprises and as the president of chief operations officer of the Los Angeles Sparks. Currently, Christine is serving as the chief operating officer for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, while also being an active member and giving back to the Los Angeles community. Christine has truly done it all and has been a huge inspiration to the LA community.
So yes, welcome Christine. Thank you so much for being part of Bruin Table Talk. How are you doing?
I'm good, Michaela. Thank you. It's so good to be here with you all. And of course, go Bruins. I mean, I got my blue. I'm representing.
Love it.
Love it. And I need those shirts. I need the shirts. And I heard, Charisma, that you designed a shirt last month, was it as well?
Lauren designed
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
We'll definitely do this year's Black History Month shirt, definitely.
Yes. So thank you again for having me.
Of course. So to kick things off, I am super excited for one, just to meet you, and just to study your bio was just so exciting. And it's even that much better to know you're a Bruin and know all the legacy that we're walking in. But I love that you have such a different perspective than really any of us, and that is in you being biracial. So if you could just take the time to explain to us just what your childhood and growing up was like, and even how that's impacted how you've navigated the last couple months.
Thanks, Lauren. You know, it's funny. I always joke, and a lot of times when I'm talking to folks, my mom's this skinny blonde white girl from Oregon. My daddy's this tall, dark-skinned brother from Pensacola, Florida. And the funniest part about it is that they met when he pulled her over because he's a former Pomona Police Department, like he was on the PD, and he pulled her over because he thought she was cute and got her number. And that's why I'm here today. But even moreover, though, my mom's first husband was Mexican. So I have 3 older half sisters that are white and Mexican. Then my dad and my mom married, had me. They divorced when I was 7, and my mom raised us 4 girls on her own. But if, when people would knock on my door, like in high school, they'd be like, "Is Christine here?" And my mom would open the door. And I'm pretty brown, I'm relatively brown skinned. I need a tan. I need to go on vacation. COVID has me locked up in this house. But typically, I'm pretty brown skinned, and people don't realize that I'm mixed a lot of times. And so they'd be like, "Am I at the right house?" Like, because, my mom's white, my sisters, are white and Mexican. So they just really didn't know. And so I was really a dark skinned, brown skinned girl, growing up in this household. And so it really affected me in so many different ways. And if we go on, one of my sisters married a Black man, another one married a white man who had a Japanese wife from a previous marriage. So they have mixed daughters. So we literally have it all in our family. And we love that. But it manifested differently this summer because, as we went through this reconciliation in our country, the conversations got tough around our table. And we even have a couple conservative folks in our family where there were some serious debates happening about racial injustice and our experiences. And that had always been mine. When I was at UCLA, I was marching up and down Bruin Walk. I was protesting. We protested 187. We protested 209. We did all of that. I was in the community. And I was pre-med, and so I was always doing hypertension screening. So my experience as a Black girl, that's how my experience was. But I always repped my mom. I always repped Rancho Cucamonga, which is where I'm from. I still do, 909 all day. But we have to be realistic about how people see me too. And there's one thing to see myself, and I celebrate all aspects of myself and all that I am, and I love it. But also making sure that I use each aspect of the privilege that is being biracial, that is being mixed, that is being kind of your traditionally, historically categorized as what people would say commercially attractive, or whatever all those silly things that they used to tell us all the time. Use that so that way I can break barriers for every other person and give every other person a voice. So that way, no matter how we look, with all of our beautiful brown skin and all of our background and all of our mixture or not, that we all have the same platform, that we all have the same opportunity and equity. So what happens, Lauren, a lot of times is I found myself as a child, well, more as a young adult, I should say, translating, right? Helping my mom and my sisters understand, because just because you're in a diverse family doesn't necessarily mean you understand the experience per se, right? Just because my mom's husband was Black, her new husband is Black, it's a thing. My daddy, his next wife was white. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. But that being said, there's still some things, some experiences, and some of it's generational too, right? And so I always found myself having these hard conversations. And then it translated into my career, where then I started helping corporate America, the entertainment industry, the sports industry. All of these folks understand someone else's lived experience that they might not have experienced themselves, whether it be gender, right? Whether it be racial or ethnic, whether it be sexual orientation. One of my sisters at one point married a woman, then she went back to men. Like, we literally have it all. Like, it's the most beautiful thing. So I always found myself trying to make sure that everybody could have a conversation and understand the other experience, because we learn so much from each other. So I think that's part of, it's not only who I am, but I've carried it throughout my career. And it's really, it's served me well, but it also fills my soul and allows me to do my work even more.
I think that's awesome. Just what you talked about, just your family experiences. And I think especially you being mixed race, just being able to have that understanding of your platform to push others forward. I think that's really, really cool and super admirable. You touched on a little bit about just you being in your profession and how that's kind of been. Can you talk more about what it's like being in a white male dominated profession, and just what's that like for you being a Black woman?
It's been interesting depending on the industry. When I was in entertainment, so I was at NBC and Disney, then I went to the Sparks, I was in sports, and then, back now to the Academy in entertainment. When I was in entertainment, it was more challenging being Black. And then when I was in sports, it was more challenging being a woman. And so it depends. And then also the organizations, right? If you're in a for-profit or a nonprofit, like all of these different things, each of them have their own personality, their own cultures, their own things that they're working through to try to bust through. And because and I consider it a blessing and an opportunity, we all have these blessings of being women of color and checking all these different boxes that maybe historically weren't seen as opportunities and weren't seen as value, but they are, and we'll touch on that. But so I think that it's a challenge, right? You walk into a room, and 9 times out of 10, they're doubting you already before you even got there, right? How'd you get here? What do you do to get here, right? Oh, you're just the one. You're the Black one, the white, the woman, the young one, the whatever one. Because typically there was only one, and unfortunately in some rooms there still is only one. We're seeing a change, we're seeing a tidal wave, which is a beautiful thing. But you have to truly, and honestly, it's been an evolution for me. I'm still coming into it, but know your worth, know what you bring to that table. And you have to stand so strong in it, because they're going to try to push you and doubt you every single time. And whether or not it's your experience. I mean, we talked about, I was pre-med at UCLA. I have a degree in physiological sciences. I don't have a business degree, but I'm in business rooms, right? Fifth sci. It was tough. Me and Kenny barely made it. Don't tell me I told you. But we did graduate. But nonetheless, I don't have a formal business degree. And so I was very much self-taught. And so that in itself, sometimes it became a challenge, because they didn't feel I had the credential, right, to be able to go through. So it's a lot of folks trying to doubt you. But what I started to do, Michaela, is I took that and I was like, oh, tell me no. Tell me no. Watch what happens when you tell me no, right? It's like when someone challenges you on the court and they try to come for you and you're like, okay. And then you take that and you're mad as hell, or you're frustrated, or you're hurt. And when you can turn that and you can channel it and just really focus in and zero in on what you can do, your skills, your value, all of that, you have to keep reinforcing it, and then surround yourself with really great people. That's what it's like. You have to really understand strength and grace. We just lost Cicely Tyson, and I think she epitomized that, right? She was always gracious, but don't mess with her. You knew where she stood. You knew her position, right? You still catch it, right? Miss Tyson. It was funny. A colleague was telling me that because he was working with her through some of our academy stuff, and you know, in our community, oftentimes we'll be like Miss Cicely, right? We put the Miss in front of the first name as respect. She was like, no, baby, it's Miss Tyson. Right. And she checked it. Right. So, and so that strength in grace, and it's something you learn because sometimes people push your buttons on purpose and then you react instead of just taking a moment and taking a beat and taking a pause. And I think when you walk into these white male dominated, especially, you know, like all of these industries, you can't let the emotion get to you. You have to stay core, stay true to your core and your values. And then that centers you, and that helps a lot. And then when you don't have enough, when you have those days, and we all have them, when you're like, I can't do this today. I can't fight this fight today. I can't fight them. I don't want to fight everybody else. Like I just can't. Then you find, okay, then what is that? You know, what is that motivation? And for me, it'll be either my son, Christian, it's y'all. You know, I know that you're looking to me, and so when I can't do it for me, I do it for you. And those are the types of things. So every day when I'm walking in and I know that there is something that I need to do, I need to push forward, change I need to make, or even just a business initiative that I need to get done that I might be doubted, that I might not be the right one to do it, then those are the things that I turn to. And it evolves over time. You find your groove and it changes with each organization, but you just have to understand. So that's where your EQ comes into play, right? How well do you understand people, read people? Understand why they're doing what they're doing, listening so much to them, because then rather than you constantly trying to talk and let them and convince them of what you're trying to do and what your initiative is or what your perspective is or what your opinion is, I've learned over years that it's more important that I listen so that way I can better understand where they're coming from and affect more sustainable, impactful change or push my initiative forward versus me just trying to convince them that mine is right. And so all of those things I've used in each of these different environments, which are typically very male and very white. But I love them and you got to embrace them. And they can be your most amazing advocates. And so many men, so many white men, so many white women, every race and color have come together to support me, business initiatives, diversity initiatives, all of these things, especially more recently. And so finding a way to inspire them in a way that they can see that they too can be part of the solution is critical. And that's been my approach. Everybody has their different approaches and every one of them is true, valid, and worthy, but that's been mine and how I've kind of gone through my journey.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you just, people are going to doubt you and you just take it and just keep being you. So I just want to ask, like, in women's basketball, a lot of people doubt like our ability to play sports because we don't do all like the flashy stuff like dunking and stuff like that. So do you just have any advice for us or to anyone watching? Like, what do you do or like, what do you say to those people who are doubting you?
Yeah, I love that question, Chrisman. You know, we were at the Sparks and you would come to the games and she even shadowed me. I think you were COO for the day once, right? Weren't you? You wore the ring, actually, if I'm not mistaken. It was on the Jumbotron, if I recall, right? Sitting courtside with me. But yeah, shout out to her. She was one of our first ones too. And Charisma, I just want to, really shout you out because you really took that opportunity and made so much out of it and just continued your passion in basketball, but understood kind of the business of the sport too, which I think is so important because it helps you become a better athlete. So I'm so proud of you, by the way. But, I really think that what we used to do is really help people understand, and we're doing it in art too, and film, and I'll bring it back to that, but basketball's a sport, right? It's not men's basketball. Right? It's basketball and there's different versions of it, right? People weren't questioning when Q brought the big three, right? That's not typical basketball. No one questioned that, right? Everybody was like, ooh, a 4-pointer. Okay. Like, right. But, and it was exciting. It was a version of basketball, but no one questioned whether it was a sport, a valid sport or not. Right. But they questioned it when it's women. and they still do to this day. And, you know, I think it's continuing to expose our young men, right? So Charisma, you remember my son at 3 years old was sitting courtside, and when I first started with the Sparks, that's how old he was. And folks would walk up into him and they would be like, who's your favorite basketball team? And he'd be like, the Sparks. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, sweetie, they mean men's basketball. And then he would say the Lakers, right? And then they'd ask who his favorite player is. He'd say Candace. Then he'd go to a Kobe or someone like that. So that's all he knew, right? He just knew that was basketball. And now, you know, he of course has his male players that he loves too, but he loves the female game just as much. And so, you know, I think it's one, making sure that people understand that there are multiple versions of this game that are beautiful. And we get so many people. I remember there were a couple of pro players that came, I won't mention names, but they were watching the Sparks and they were like, yo, you know, I would have never made that third pass, and like we would never, like the teamwork and the fundamentals and all of that comes in the women's game, you know, that sometimes gets taken for granted because of the athleticism. And I'm going to use air quotes because women are just as athletic as men, but it's the predefined athleticism that people have kind of conceptualized because we have this ideology that athleticism means male, higher, you know, all of that other thing, jumping higher, all those other things. And that's not necessarily the case. Athleticism comes in a lot of different shapes and forms. And it's not just because you can dunk or not, right? And by the way, we can dunk too. Not me personally, but we can dunk too, right? And I'm sure one of y'all can as well. So, you know, I think we have to continually help to break down these ideologies. And we have the most amazing unconscious bias trainer that's been helping us at the Academy. And she tells this story about the fish and the fox. Her name is Dr. Darnisa Amante Jackson. And it's this story where she's hilarious. She's from Brooklyn. She's like, it's Brooklyn. So like, what up, fish? And they're like, hey, fox. Like, this is literally how she tells the story. It's hilarious. And so she tells the story where the fox comes and asks the fish about the rocks, and the fish tell the fox, you know, the rocks are cool. You know, we rub them against them. Well, how's the sun? The sun's great. You know, it creates algae. We eat it. Last question, how is the water? And the fish say, what is water? And what that means is that there's all this ideology floating around us in the air that we don't even know is there. We don't know we were taught it, right? And so we were taught the ideologies, and 9 times out of 10, they're based on white, male, cisgendered, white, Western cultures, okay? And those ideologies tell us what excellence is. Those ideologies tell us what athleticism is, what sport is, right? And so they're all based in that. So anything that's different from that is othered. That must be something else. That's not a sport. That's not basketball. That's not any of those things. That's only because the ideology is the water that people have internalized. We drink that water, not we, us, but we, them, right? So we often used to joke that, you know, while we empower young girls, more importantly, we enlighten young boys and men as to what we can do. And I think that's so critical, especially on today. And I don't know when are we airing this? I don't know when we're airing this, but it, you know, we're celebrating National Girls and Women's in Sports Day today. And, you know, that celebration is truly a highlight of what we can do, just and truly blowing up what people think we can do. And most importantly, blowing up what people think we can't do. So it's less on us when it comes to women's sports, women's basketball, all of that, to continue to help educate them. I think we're getting to a point where they need to start educating themselves, but we'll continue to show them and showcase it. But I think that as we do, and especially for, you know, people like me who hold seats and may have a C in front of their title or whatever, you know, people in positions of power have to continue to make sure that we're blowing up those ideologies and helping to teach people otherwise. Y'all just keep showing up and balling like you do. And that's, you know, we'll get there, but it's going to take a little while. But we're getting there and we're making progress. And the more we can empathize with other people's experiences, i.e. the more we see, you know, Dwayne Wade standing up for his daughter and her showing up in her most authentic way, right? And the more we can get what's considered to be mainstream, right? When Kobe advocated and showed up in his orange hoodie for the WNBA, right, then we saw that, oh, okay, it's okay. We want to get to the point where Kobe doesn't have to validate us, right? The only validation we need is for our parking. But until then, we'll continue to, work on that, and we'll get these allies, we'll get these folks that'll support us, and we'll just keep breaking barriers and showing, putting points on the board, and winning championships. I don't know. Right.
Yes, I love just keep breaking barriers and just keep showing out and just showing them that we're just as good and we're just as powerful. But yeah, it was so fun doing the COO, like shadowing for a day. Like I had so much fun.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. Just when you said your son, he was like, "Yep, my favorite players are Candace, and like my favorite team is the Sparks." And I just love that, because I so agree that it does have to start with turning young boys into fans, and knowing that, letting young boys know that they can have female role models, and that's completely okay. So I love that. I truly do. Exactly. That is,
and Candace and I, chat a lot about that. And, it's something she's ridiculously passionate about. She grew up playing with her brothers, and they were like, I don't care what gender you are, let's play, let's ball. And she feels the same. And so she's been really, pushing boundaries on that too. So I'm really proud of her work in that. But it's exposure, right? It is that cliche, if you can see it, you can be it, and all of that. But, it is true, right? If people see something different than they've been taught or exposed in a different way, then you can't unsee it, right? And every time we'd have one of the NBA guys come, or just kind of a hardcore NBA fan come to watch the Sparks, like, damn, these girls can ball. Like, that was always the first thing that came out of their mouths. And, and I think the difference is too, though, we have to also get our broadcast partners to understand that our game is different, not less, not more, different. And thus how you shoot our game visually needs to be different, right? So as we've seen when they were in the bubble, when the guys were in the bubble, the Oculus cam that they had that went up and down the court gave a view that I think would probably benefit the women's game a little bit more than the far out view that we typically get of the women's game, right? Because then you kind of can zoom in and really understand the intensity that is there versus kind of the back. And so what that would help us do, because a lot of times people's first exposure is on TV to the game, and it's a far different experience than when you're in arena and when you're in the bowl in an arena in a game, right? And so typically what I really try to do is always get people in the arena, in the bowl, for their first exposure to the women's game, especially on the professional level. College is different. The energy in a college arena is totally different, but still, nonetheless, I think it's kind of the same. But if their first exposure is going to be on TV, how we shoot, the number of cameras that we have, where those angles are, it can't just be cookie cutter. It's not the same. You can't just take the camera work from the men's game and put it on the women's game, because it's a different game. So we have to adjust every aspect of the game, how you market it, how you sell it, how you shoot it, how you promote it, how you market it. It's not the same. And so we have to make sure that we recognize that, and teams continue to do that, and leagues continue to do that.
Yes. I think one of the biggest things you said, like, exposure is just so huge. Exposure to the sport in the right way. Because I can testify, it's way different watching a game on the TV than it is being there. And just watching, reading about you and your bio, all the things you've done, and then watching Candace perform, and just great role models, and just lifting up the community, lifting up little girls, and being such an inspiration. So I want to ask you, us trying to become mentors and inspiration to the next generation, what advice would you give us?
Yeah, just start now, right? There's already, and you all know this, right? You all know there's already young women looking up to you already. And so you don't have to, you don't have to have a big title, or you don't have to lived, some of us are a little older, I'm just saying. So you don't have to be 46 years old before you start mentoring, or have a title, or these experiences. Start now, and whatever it is that you're passionate about, start doing that, right? And so I think for so many of us, especially with my generation, we waited for permission. We waited for people to tell us, oh yes, okay, you're allowed to go do that now. And that's what I love about your generation, is you're all like, I'll ask for forgiveness. I'm not going to ask for permission, right? And I love that. And I do that in my career, but I wouldn't like sometimes I wouldn't take those chances. And I definitely didn't do that when I was your age. So, I think start doing it, go for it. And the beauty is you're actually at the point where you could like swing for the fences, and if you miss or if you fall short, it's really not that big of a deal, right? When you have a little bit more responsibility, or you have a kid, or you have a house, or you have all these other responsibilities that come with, adulting, then, there's a bit more risk on the table. So this is the time to really dive in and go for it. But as it relates to mentorship specifically, find what's comfortable for you, right? Everybody's not an extrovert. Everybody doesn't have time. A lot of people don't have patience, especially for younger girls, right? Like, I'm a mom. It takes patience. Like he's 9 and he asks the most brilliant and like observant questions and wants to ask all these questions all the time. And mom, and I'm like, okay. And you got to take that breath and really explain, because I want to explain it, but there are times you just want to be like, because I said so, right? And you just want to be like, So you got to find, that works for you. So, and there's so many opportunities, and, it could be one conversation. It could be just them seeing you in the moment, because like, for instance, I didn't know my job existed, either this one, the Sparks, or any of the others, right? I knew you could be a doctor or a lawyer. So I went to UCLA and I was going to be pre-med and I was going to save the world that way. There's lots of ways to save the world, right? And so I think it's just the little things add up too. But find those things in it, and it could be your hometown, right? Whether you're from LA or not, it could be your college town, but also be strategic and don't feel bad about being strategic about it. I think more and more, especially as Black women, we really have to think about ourselves. We tend to save the world first and think about ourselves last, and then we burn ourselves out. So case in point, we'll keep it real. I told you I was planning African grad, right? I was volunteering, I was Black pre-health, I was Black hypertension project, I was academic supports program, I was academic advancement program, I was African brothers and sisters, I was all up in CPO, I was all those things, okay? And probably some more. I can't remember all of them at this point. I also became subject to dismissal because I was doing too damn much. And so because we know we have that sense of responsibility, right? And Kamala said it best. I had said it before too. We all believe it. I may be the first, but I won't be the last. We carry that. It's heavy. We carry it and we fight every day so we're not, but that's exhausting. And sometimes it'll take away from your ultimate goal. So be strategic, volunteer, mentor, but also like, for instance, like I am part of Carrie Champion's Brown Girl Stream. Carrie and I went to UCLA together. And so she recruited me for that, but it's also a great networking opportunity for me, right? Like it's Carrie, it's Bozema, it's Jamel, it's like all of these badass women. And I'm like, I'm good. Like these are, like it's great to be in this circle and while we mentor the next generation as well. So be smart about it and don't feel bad about that. Any nonprofit or anything that I do now, I take a look, okay, who else is on the board? Okay, what other things, how does this help me in both my personal journey, my professional journey, and then also in my commitment to the community and my commitment to giving back. And a lot of times you can find things that do all of them at the same time. So as student athletes, you guys already have intense schedules, right? So you have to be smart about all of this. And so, yes, I do want you to give back. I do want you to be role models. I do want you to build your empire. Start thinking about your empire now, right? And what you want to do and all of those things, both on the court, off the court, after basketball, all of those things. But be really, be very disciplined and discerning with your time. Be strategic and don't feel bad about it. You have to win at all of these things, and we're held to a higher level of scrutiny than anyone else, especially you all on that court. And so make sure that you're taking care of you and you're being strategic about it. But just give your heart, and it'll flow naturally. You'll find that thing. Like you'll find, like one of my bosses once asked me, "What's your default?" And my default was giving back. My default was community service. My default was diversity and advocacy and representation and advocating for those that didn't have a voice. That's my default. I happen to be good at business. right? And so that's my skill set. But that default brings me joy. And so find that. And for me, it was sports and entertainment and a little bit of finance, because I really feel like those industries help change trajectories in ways that others don't quite, because we have a platform already, whether it's, you know, you're an athlete or a franchise, whether you're an artist, filmmaker, studio, or whether you're, you know, looking at portfolios, investment management and venture capital and all those things. There are these platforms that allow you to leapfrog when it comes to generational wealth versus like climbing a corporate ladder and getting that job where you're going on that. So those are mine, but you figure out yours and you kind of do a circle here, like, okay, I really love these industries. I really love giving back to these communities, or these are my passion projects. These are my skill sets that I'm really, really good at, right? I like solving problems, I like business problems, I like procedures, I like strategy, I like campaigns, I like all of those things. And then in that little circle is your sweet spot. You're gonna have some chapters where you're really focused on this one, some chapters of your life where you're really focused on this one, and then sometimes this one. And then eventually you get to that center spot. So think about how you give back in those terms. So that way, and it may be now that like I said, you might just be in one circle, and that's okay, but at least you've thought about it and you've been thoughtful about the things that you've decided to do and how you spend your time and who you spend it with.
Okay, so there's just so much to unpack in everything you've said, and I just feel like we don't have enough time. But one thing you really said that really struck me was just that you knew like about being an attorney or being a doctor, but even what you're doing now really never came across your radar. And so unlike these three, I'm a senior who also doesn't know what's coming next. And so I think I have 1,000 passions, 1,000 things that like I want to do and people I want to impact. And I just have no clue what that looks like yet. And so like, I'm super excited that you said that, just because I feel like I'm in like this chapter of just anxiety and panic of trying to like, you know, I want to get it right when I graduate. Like, and I know I'm coming out with great degrees, but you know, you don't want to mess up. And like, there's all these people that are looking to you to still be a success once I've decided to not keep playing basketball. So can you just talk about like, what was navigating that like, and to go from, I don't really know what I want to do, to the success you are and just the influential being that you are?
Thank you for that. And I like the low-key flex of degrees, plural, low-key flex. Don't worry, we didn't miss it. I see you, Lauren. Okay. First, think about when you have that anxiety, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst possible thing that can happen, right? For me, it was I don't get into medical school. That was the worst possible thing. Guess what? It happened. I didn't get into medical school. So, you know, think about those things and then realize that you have been preparing for that worst case scenario your entire life, right? You guys go into a game like, you know, you're confident you're going to win. You believe you're going to win, but you don't always win. You don't win them all. We try, but we don't win them all. And so, you know, I think that helps with the anxiety. The beauty is you don't have to find in that Venn diagram that I talked about with this circle, you don't have to find that sweet spot the second you graduate, right? So when I graduated, then I didn't get in, and then I went and did I did about a year of a post-bac program that I ended up not finishing, and then I found my new passion, and I realized that I could be this advocate, and I could do this work, but do it not in hospital and not in the nonprofit clinics that I wanted to start, but I could do it in business, right? And I could actually do it in a way in which I probably liked more because there was less bureaucracy and more money potentially, depending on what your specialty was, right? So think about your worst case scenario. That helps with the anxiety. Don't put so much pressure on yourself that it has to be perfect the second. Just try something. The more you fail, the farther you'll get. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think we have to redefine the word failure. And I think, you know, a lot of people have been talking about this lately, right? Like you try a lot, you fail a lot, but then once you finally, you know, get to that place, it takes all those no's to get to that one yes. But the way I look at it more is that if you aren't failing, you're coasting, right? You're not taking risks, you're playing it safe. So try it. And also try the things that especially the aspects of the things that you're passionate about, and maybe there's parts that you don't like. Like typically when people come into, like when they came into sports, I'd be like, okay, they know they just want to work in sports. And I said, okay, well, what are some of the areas that you don't like? And they're like, well, I don't like to sell. guess what? That's the first thing you should try to do, especially if you are aspiring to run a team, because that way you at least should know what it's like to do it, what it means, and understand all that. Too, you never know, you might end up liking it, right? Those kind of things. So my point is, take one of those things and just try it. Just go. It doesn't mean that's going to define you for the rest of your life, right? You can always change. One of my favorite phrases that I talk about often is relentlessly reinvent yourself, right? And so you'll start, you'll try it, you'll get to a point, you'll get out of it what you want, all the lessons you need, right? The networking that you need, the context that you need. You'll give some back, you'll add a lot of value, you'll leave your mark, and move on to the next thing. And then you'll reinvent yourself for that next thing, right? I used to have like 4 or 5 different types of resumes, right? When I started out, I was a temporary administrative assistant. I was answering phones, and I had a resume for that. And then like once I got past that job, then I had a resume for that just in case I needed it, but then I had a resume for something else. So continue to relentlessly reinvent yourself, and don't feel like you have to find your dream career like the second you graduate. It's not going to happen. If it does, you're blessed, and that's great. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen. So try. And then most importantly, do what you're doing now. This networking, social capital is key. And the beauty with what you all have with your platform and who you are, and especially this university and your alumni association, is people really, you guys are the cool kids. Folks want to meet you. They want to talk to you. They want to know you. Take advantage of it. And Irvin used to talk about that a lot when I worked for him. And so when Magic was playing for the Lakers, he would take advantage of that, and he would meet with a lot of the business guys that were sitting courtside when he played, right? And took advantage of all of those types of things. And so, and for you all, it's just a learning experience now, and just getting to know folks, talking to them, and picking bits and pieces out of their lives, their journeys, their careers that speak to your different passions. And so that way you're lining them up so that when the time comes, they'll take your call, right? And sponsor you and mentor you and hire you and all of those things. So don't be afraid, keep all of the passions. And sometimes you're not going to see that passion in your job. And so what I did when I didn't see it in my job, I found a volunteer opportunity where then it helped fulfill me. So totally separate things. But then when I quickly started to learn, I was like, ooh, can I find a volunteer opportunity that also might speak to that too? And actually, that's what got me involved with the Black Alumni Association at UCLA, because I was passionate about all the work that we do for African American students at UCLA and for alums. The board was really cool. It was a good networking opportunity, and I could give back in a way that also would help me in my career. So pick one of those passions, give it a try, and then simultaneously build skills and experience or fulfillment in something else. And then just keep at it, keep going, keep reinventing, keep trying. It's beautiful. And the other part of it is now things aren't as strictly defined as they used to be, right? And I give the example a lot of, people will go to medical school and get a degree, and then they go and consult on movies or TV shows, for doctors and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can, the intersectionalities of careers now is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And there's so much opportunity to create the opportunity that you want and make it manifest. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. What's the worst that could happen? And don't stress about the stuff that I almost cursed. Don't stress about the stuff that you don't have control over. And then give it a try. Why not? And I want to be realistic about the fact that a lot of us don't have a luxury of just being able to try and go on a what is it when you take a break like from college and like what do you young people call it? Yes, thank you. That's what the kids call it, a gap year. So like some of us don't have the luxury to do a gap year, right? I had to work. I was working 34 hours a week at UCLA while I was going to school. So I want to be cognizant of that. So understand that. And then the last point on this, especially, don't start creating debt, creating things that you have to pay for, responsibilities unnecessarily. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we'll take on an apartment that we may not necessarily need, or a car that we may not necessarily. Be very thoughtful about that, because the more you take on, the more you have to work to support it, and the more responsibility you have, which gives you less freedom to really explore what you want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that is so great. I love that, relentlessly reinventing yourself, because I think that is something that's definitely hard for like our generation. And you want to feel like the person you're putting out is the right version. But I think that's so cool and exciting, just to keep trying and fail forward through it all.
Yes, there are going to be 8 million versions of you, and each one gets better and better and better. Let me tell you. Wait till you get to your 40s. They'll be amazing.
And so now is the best part of our Bruin Table Talks. We are going to hit you with fun, light questions. They're going to come from all different corners and aspects. So I can't tell you what they're going to ask. I got no idea. So prepare yourself for it.
Okay, I'm a little nervous. Okay, I'm ready.
I'll go first. Okay, so who was an actor or actress you were most starstruck meeting?
I kind of know him now, but it was Boris. Like the first time I met Boris Kojo, I was like, I couldn't even talk. It's hilarious. And I've met him and his wife Nicole and their kids and their family, and and Candace and them really close to them. So now I kind of know them just as people. But the first time I met him, I literally could not speak. So that would be just from a first impression perspective. Goodness, that's a tough one, because I've always been around high profile people. I don't get starstruck much. I think that was more that he is lovely. But I get starstruck after the business folks, Ava DuVernay is on our board, and just her brilliant artist mind, but business mind, but activist mind. I could sit and listen to her talk all day long. So I don't know that I would call it starstruck, but just amazing. And she's a Bruin.
Follow-up question to that. We are all, us four, are huge fans of Viola Davis. Have you ever got a chance to meet her? Just curious.
I have not met Viola yet. I have not. I've met many other of the legends in that space. I haven't met her yet. I think she's at the show, but I haven't met her yet. But when I do, I promise I will make sure and send her love from y'all. she's pretty phenomenal.
That's so awesome. Okay, so first we got to see the ring. You got to show them.
Oh yeah.
Show the ring. Y'all see the ice.
Bit of a glare. Let's see. I know the ice. It's blinding, right?
Blinding.
Right. You can really totally see it. I'm trying to get the good angle there, but it's so you have. I helped design it, as I mentioned earlier. There are 3 black diamonds to represent the 3 championships that the Sparks had. You have 10 diamonds on each side. This was the 20th anniversary of the league and the Sparks. So you have 10 diamonds on each side to represent those 20 years. Back then they were doing Western Conference championships still. They kind of changed the league a bit, but there are 4 diamonds, 1, 2, 3, 4 to represent the 4 Western Conference championships. There is, trying to see if I can get closer here. There is a whole city skyline right here. It's hard to see a little bit, but you have the whole skyline there. Unfortunately, that other school is our practice facility, or was our practice facility, so it may or may not be on there. Don't tell anybody. On this side, let's see if you have a year. You have my name. So typically people would do my title, COO. People would do their last names. My last name, Simmons, is actually my married name. I am divorced. I've been divorced for about 5 years now, but my son and I share the same name, so I wanted to keep it. But because it is my ex-husband's name, I decided to use my maiden name is, my dad's, and we've reestablished our relationship, which is great. But Christine is me. And so I put my first name on my ring. And so it says Christine. And then there's 2 other things on the inside. And I'll send you guys, there's a whole video on the making of the ring, but that's our We Are Women logo. We started a campaign about women's empowerment. And each year we celebrated women's health and wellness and empowerment, and we worked to sell out Staples Center, all celebrating that, and we did some awards. And so that's the logo for that. And then finally, the interesting thing is the bottom has 10 diamonds. Let's see if we get closer there. There's 10 diamonds on the bottom. So the Sparks in 2012-13, the previous ownership group decided to walk away from their ownership. So Urban and two other folks got calls that said, hey, do you want to buy the Sparks? So the way it worked is they needed to do it so fast, or else the Sparks were going to leave LA. So, and they didn't know whether or not, like, the league was trying to do a schedule. They didn't know if there was going to be 12 teams, 11 teams, an LA team. They didn't know. So they had to do the transaction in 10 days. Typically, it takes a couple of years to do a transaction to buy a team. They did it in 10 days. And so we did 10 diamonds on the bottom of the ring to celebrate that as well. There's a bunch of other little stories and notes in the ring, but I did get to help design it and so on.
That's awesome. That ring is beautiful. Love the diamonds.
Yeah, and it's big. And I may or may not have put it on this finger on purpose.
Speaking of the Sparks, do you have a favorite player?
It's tough now. My girl decided to go home to Chicago, so I'm proud of her, grateful for Candace and all that she gave to the city and to the team. You know, there's a lot of new players. You know, Taya Cooper is looking really great. She's explosive. Brittany Sykes, her athleticism is ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy. Sydney Weiss is one of the most beautiful humans you'd ever meet in life, and she's a great shooter. So, you know, it's really interesting. They're in the middle of free agency right now. So it's interesting to see how they're going to come. Of course, Nneka Ogwumike, and how she's been standing up for the league is phenomenal. And, you know, when she creates opportunities for herself, like, she is just sick with it and powerful, and love her down low. You know, Erica Wheeler, they just signed her as well. So we'll see how that goes, but I think they're going to be a great duo together. So it's kind of hard right now, but you know, I'm sure Candace, of course, would be top. Our kids go to school or went to school together as well and have become close friends too. So it's been great to see her journey, and, you know, and she too has been evolving. We see her on TNT. She started her own production company. She's been doing a lot of beautiful entrepreneurial stuff, and so I'm really happy to see her growth. Also, Chelsea Gray, love Chels. Excited to see her go to Vegas and do her thing there. So she also was one of our favorite point guard that we called her. So she was awesome too. So many have come through, and it was a pleasure and an honor to be able to have that role. That was my baby. The Sparks are my baby. I love the Academy, and it's a new and different and exciting opportunity to truly affect an industry. And so, you know, this is a great, wonderful, beautiful chapter. It was such a pleasure, though, to be able to help get them restarted, if you will, and really take it to the level that they deserve to be on, you know, in LA as a premier team. And for the longest, up until last year, we were the last LA team to win a championship, and then the Lakers and the Dodgers came through last year. So yeah, those are my faves, now that I named everybody on the team. That'd be like asking, like, who's your favorite kid? Luckily, that's why I only had one.
Okay, last but not least, obviously you have some Bruin roots. So can you tell me, what is your favorite memory being an undergrad at UCLA?
That I can talk about. Just kidding. Honestly, it was the organizing. It was, you know what it was? Campbell Hall Study Hall. AAP Campbell Hall Study Hall. And I don't know if you all still do, but AAP used to host study hall, and most of the Black students would go, and we would go and study there. Most of the time we would be studying, half of the time not so much, but so for us that was great. I also just really enjoyed African grad. Planning African grad for me was always such a joy, because it really gave us a moment to truly recognize all of those that helped get us there, in a way that the major graduations wouldn't do. And so we always have fun doing that. I'll never forget. So Tanisa Singleton is John Singleton's sister. graduated the same year, and I was also planning acting grad that year. And so John came, and I remember like we had to like keep security tight because there was this one group of football players that would always tackle their guys every time they walked across the stage. And so we'd always have to like watch security. So John got up to take pictures of his sister. And so I remember like trying to tell him like, excuse me, Mr. Singleton, but can you please sit down? And he looked at me like I was crazy because he was just trying to take pictures of his sister graduating. So those are the kinds of memories for me, I think, that were really amazing and just that stuck with me. And a lot of it too is because I carried that with me through my career. So planning acting grad, being the director of academic supports program as I did graduate, being a student leader and organizer gave me a lot of business skills that I use today. And so that truly was my UCLA experience. And of course, rooted in activism. And so now I've just kind of become more of a corporate activist now.
Yeah, you've just done so much. But we have come to the end of our Bruin Table Talk today. I just want to thank you, Christine. We are just so appreciative of your knowledge. And I was like taking note. So I just want to say thank you so much for being part of our Bruin Table Talk.
Yes, thank you so much. It was so great to see you again. It's been a while. We just appreciate you and appreciate you coming on. And it was just really fun to have you.
Yeah, honestly, just echoing them, it was such a pleasure to get to meet you. And you truly are a gem. Like Michaela said, there was so much to pull and just for us to utilize going forward and as we keep growing and becoming women more like you. So thank you so much.
Lastly, just echoing them, thank you so much for your time, all the little nuggets. I just know we will all just now live relentlessly reinventing ourselves. And you're just the true definition of Black girl magic. We all had so much fun. Thank you again. And like always, go Bruins.
Go Bruins.